Hello, and welcome to another London Business School Travel and Hospitality Fireside Chat. I'm very excited to welcome Justin Dahnert, Transfer Pricing at Expedia, who is also part of the Executive MBA program at London Business School. Justin, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good, Coral. Thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here and to talk with the group. So we're happy to help out.
Great. So it's great to have someone from LBS, and today's chat is mainly about you, Justin, and your journey. So for the people who don't know you, it would be great to start with a quick introduction. If you can please share a few words about yourself and your background.
Sure. So I grew up in the United States. Grew up in the Midwest, so in the north central cold part of Minneapolis, but went to school and I was in accounting for undergrad and got a master's in accounting, then moved to PricewaterhouseCoopers in Chicago to work in their Chicago practice there for about 5 years or so. And then after Chicago, kind of got sick of the cold a little bit, moved to the somewhat warmer weather of Seattle. And at that time, in moving to Seattle, transitioned from PwC to Expedia Group. And so have been with Expedia now previously in the Washington office. So they're headquartered in Seattle. And so worked there for a few years and then had the opportunity to come to London and work out of our London office here. And so I've been in London since the end of 2018. So just about 2.5 years now. It's gone really fast, but at the same time, when I look back of things that have changed last 2.5 years, it's been kind of a momentous period of time, but have enjoyed it a lot so far.
Great. Thanks for sharing. So in the past weeks, I had some chats with friends, from home, interested in the Executive MBA program. So it would be really great to hear more about how you have decided to come to LBS, to this particular program.
Yes, so I kind of an MBA more broadly was one of my goals of kind of on my, lifelong bucket list. It was always something I wanted to pursue. And I had never really found the right time or the right moment in my career to really do that. But I guess what really drew me to the Executive MBA program is when I was moving to London with the Expedia Group for the opportunity here. It was, had obviously heard of London Business School before, and it was a well-regarded institution. And so being able to pursue the MBA, the Executive MBA at London Business School while working full-time was really appealing to me. I didn't want to take time off of work to pursue the MBA full-time. So the Executive MBA had that flexibility where I could go on the weekends and kind of tailor my schedule for the courses. I kind of could fit around being able to work and kind of fulfill my normal day-to-day job responsibilities. So I think that was a huge benefit to me. I think it was really appealing to me to be able to pursue that work in the MBA full-time with the education. So yeah, I've been happy with it. Planning to hopefully graduate this summer from the Executive MBA program and in the middle of the electives now, but have really enjoyed the courses so far. It's really kind of built up my broader business knowledge and been just the networking within the cohort, even though a lot of it's been virtual over the past year, but it's been really helpful and to build those connections and kind of build out that network as well through LBS.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. And it's also great to hear that you really enjoy this experience. I'm sure that at least some of my friends would be very happy to reach out after this chat. So let's talk a bit about Expedia, one of the obviously biggest travel tech companies. It would be really interesting to hear about your journey and including your current role.
Yes, so I guess my current role is working in the transfer pricing group at Expedia. So it's within the finance organization there. We really focus on pricing some of our intercompany transactions between our global legal entities, since we have the global footprint of legal entities in multiple countries. And so I guess when I first started working at Expedia, I was still with PwC and was working on a project at Expedia. And so it was kind of a good trial where I got to work with the team that I currently work with full time. So I got to see how they operate from a cultural perspective at the company, see what kind of the operating styles, the people that work on the team there. And so it worked out very well in my case, where I could kind of try it out to see how I'd like it through this project, and then really enjoy the team, really work with the working style and the industry, so decided to come on full time. And I think outside of the people, which were kind of the biggest draws, is the company itself. And I think from a broader industry perspective, I know I wanted to work in the travel industry, knowing that, I mean, similar to most people, people enjoy traveling. I think it's a force of good for the world, and it brings a lot of value, not just for the enjoyment, but kind of bringing the cultures together, and just brings a lot of good experiences to the world. And so combining that with the technology, which I was also interested in, and knowing like technology industry is always fast growing, fast moving, and you always have to it's an exciting industry to be in with a lot of growth opportunities. And so being able to combine, okay, this is a good team at Expedia that I've worked with, I know from personal experience, and then it was working in the travel industry and working in the technology space too. It was kind of the trifecta there that really kind of drew me to the opportunity to Expedia Group, and it's been a great, I guess, 4.5 years now. So it's been an exciting journey with a lot of developments along the way.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, it's really inspiring. Yeah, so I mean, you talked about Expedia, and obviously you joined before the pandemic. So the next question is a question I tend to ask in every fireside chat. I think people can really get a sense of, the changes in the travel tech industry due to the pandemic. So how is it like to be working in the travel, since the outbreak of COVID-19?
Yeah. I mean, initially at the onset, just based on, I guess, from a broader perspective, when there's just so much uncertainty and nervousness, not only for, I guess, the travel industry, but for people in general, where like me in particular, most people are kind of worried about like safety first and foremost, like how there was not a lot of knowledge at that point of what was going to be kind of the next steps in the pandemic. So making sure you can ensure your own safety, your family's safety, and there was a lot of that uncertainty at first, which was, I think, pervasive not just in the travel but in other industries as well. But then I think once, I think from the pandemic perspective at Expedia Group, it was in the travel industry in general, it was kind of a little bit refreshing to see the problem solving approaches where you had, I mean, the travel industry is obviously very severely impacted by the pandemic. So you had so many problems and kind of issues arising from like a traveler perspective, from an industry partner perspective too, and being able to solve those problems. It was refreshing to see like the cross team collaboration across the travel industry, and particularly in Expedia, where we worked with multiple teams, or kind of every day new problems would arise. So you'd have a lot of people collaborating and working together to solve these problems in an expeditious manner, because it was new problems coming up every day that needed to be solved really quickly, because people had very travel plans that they were stuck places and needed to get back, or needed the flexibility with their travel plans. So I think being able to see people kind of diving in, working together, and kind of coming together in that collective spirit to really solve the problems was refreshing to see. And I mean, yeah, obviously from an industry perspective, it had some severe implications to the travel industry as a whole, but being able to see kind of those positives and kind of build from there. And then I think as we come out of the pandemic and travel starts to rebound in the future, I think there's a lot of capabilities that were built up through the pandemic where you had to be more efficient, you had to build up more tools, so to bring more value to customers and to industry partners, and kind of reaping some of those benefits from the development of those tools throughout the pandemic to really help the travel industry continue to rebound.
Yeah, great. So if we can really take your last point and try to elaborate more. So I'm really curious to know, what structural changes do you anticipate in the travel industry due to COVID and post-COVID? Or maybe in other words, where do you see the industry going in general?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it's a lot of unknowns at this point, but I think there's certain things we'll see depending if it's a short-term view or kind of the longer or medium-term view. From a short-term view perspective, I think it's just needing the additional flexibility. So if people are traveling in kind of an atmosphere of uncertainty, being able to ensure they have the flexibility, whether it's to cancel or to change their plans, or to change however their plans may shift depending on different regulations, restrictions, or just not really feeling comfortable to travel, whatever the conditions are, especially when travel, a lot of times they book well in advance, you have the uncertainties you have to weigh against. So being able to first and foremost provide that flexibility to people, I think will be big for the industry. and for, I guess, from the payments perspective too, and making sure that people can kind of get their money back if plans change. But then I think from a flexibility standpoint, from like the shorter booking windows too, where in the kind of the face of uncertainty, people aren't willing to book these trips maybe a year in advance like they typically have before, and kind of waiting and seeing to see what the different regulations are before really making those decisions on what to book. So seeing some of that shorter booking windows. And then I think more obviously like the safety perspective, and as we see a lot about across the industry of a lot of changes to ways people check into properties and trying to make those as contactless as possible for the check-in process, or the enhanced safety and kind of cleaning protocols across the industry. And probably seeing those across is kind of the structural change that will be in the short term for sure that's going on now, but then likely persist kind of going on as we kind of recover from the pandemic. And then I think from more travel perspective, like you see a lot uptick in the domestic travel, and people a lot of times going to places that they can drive to. It may be not so much flying, at least in the shorter term period, before they, I guess, feel more comfortable with international travel and the long haul flights. And then similarly for the vacation rental space, so seeing some strong vacation rental trips, so people can kind of explore more of the rural areas or the more domestic places they can drive to. And I think some of the longer stays there as well, where you can, I mean, with certain people have the flexibility to work remotely, so kind of taking the opportunity to take advantage of that and maybe move out of where they're living currently in their apartment or flat, and then being able to take a trip to a vacation rental and work from there, and kind of have that mix of the leisure and the working together is kind of the trend we see in the shorter term. But I think when you look at like the medium or longer term too, I think, I mean, it's inevitable that the travel industry will come back, and hopefully sooner rather than later, and kind of reach those pre-pandemic levels and continue to grow. But then I think too, it's more of a sustainability trend too in the medium to longer term, where you have sustainability not only from like an over tourism perspective, where I think the pandemic gave a lot of the tourism destinations like a chance to kind of reevaluate their strategies. And I think there's always a balance of like, you want to promote tourism to your country or your city or wherever it may be, and kind of bring in those local tourism dollars, but then also trying to balance that with being able to protect the city, so people in the future can enjoy that and preserve some of that for future generations. And then I think just from the ongoing, from an eco-conscious perspective, and the emissions and pollution, and thinking about ways that the travel industry can kind of better combat some of those issues, will be kind of a medium to longer term aspect as well.
Yeah, thanks. That's great. And I mean, I feel like one of the things that I really like about, I mean, if I can take something from this pandemic, is the fact that it's kind of like this new trend of end of over tourism, as you just said. And yeah, and the fact that finally we can experience more like authentic experiences once again, because we used to have it before, I mean, years ago, but now we can go back and experience this authentic experience. I really like it. Great. Yeah, so maybe one or two more questions. So basically, my next question, I would like to focus more on the tech sector in general, and mainly because some LBS students are transitioning from various sectors to tech. So maybe if you can share, what are the main skills one should have to succeed in tech?
Yeah, and I think first and foremost, being able to be adaptable to the technology industry, where the technology industry is growing fast. It's always changing. There's always new developments and new tools and technologies on the horizon. So being able to be adaptable and kind of reshift your priorities on a continuous basis is important. Where if you look at maybe other industries that are more in the mature phase of the industry, and you kind of know, okay, there'll be the growth of the transformation will be at a slower process, so you kind of can plan out your course a little bit more structured. But with technology, it's always being able to be adaptable, being able to respond to the shifting priorities and to the shifting technologies of the industry is definitely a key skill to have. And just being able to embrace that change. And I think with that change comes a lot of excitement. So I encourage people to join the tech industry. I think it's a fun place to work. I think it's always changing, always something new to learn about, which keeps it exciting. And I think an industry that you can work in for a long period of time without getting sick or getting stale at all. So I encourage that adaptability. I think too, from a communication standpoint, like I think being able to clearly articulate what your vision is and kind of simplify the message for people is really important in the technology industry. I think a lot of times technology can be really complicated and complex, and you're working with new technologies and new tools. And so a lot of times you kind of doing things at the forefront where maybe it's not like a widespread knowledge of whatever the tool that you're working on. And so being able to work on that tool, but then getting kind of the details, but then be able to clearly articulate what it is that you're trying to accomplish, what the tool is intended to do, and being able to kind of simplify that message so people who aren't as in the details or in the weeds, for instance, can understand what you're trying to do, can understand the broader implications. And I think that's even more important, I guess, internally within the company. You're working with people in different functions across the technology companies. So whether they're in kind of the product or the engineering or marketing or sales or finance, whatever it may be, being able to kind of bridge those gaps and kind of get across your message of what your implications are for the tool, what you're planning to do and the goals, and be able to communicate that so the other stakeholders can understand that. But then from an external facing perspective, kind of communicate that to the market too. So customers or kind of suppliers or other people you work with, other industry partners, are able to understand what you're trying to do and kind of figure out ways that you can partner together to bring value. I think is really important from that collaboration standpoint. But then I think it's kind of the general terms like networking. Like after being at LBS for over a year now, I think I've really underappreciated the value of networking and kind of building those connections. And I think from a technology industry perspective, it's like you see a lot of the same, no matter what industry you're in within technology, like whether it's travel or other places, you see a lot of the same opportunities and problems that are kind of pervasive in the industry. And so just connecting with people in other across the technology spectrum in different industries and be able to learn from their experiences, kind of learn how they're adapting to new technologies or learn how they're incorporating new technologies into their business is definitely helpful to continue to do so. And I think building those connections will just help you kind of further your career in the technology industry. And then I think similarly, just being technology industry is always changing. So just being aware of the trends, kind of the new technologies, and just kind of monitoring to see what's changing in the industry and kind of trying to stay at the forefront of those kind of current developments and current events and developments in the technology space, I think will be really advantageous.
Fantastic. Thanks. Very, very, like great tips. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. So thanks for sharing this. And yeah, I mean, I think it's time to wrap up, and maybe we can finish with the best advice for current MBA students looking to get into the travel space.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I would recommend the travel space. I think maybe from an outsider's perspective, if you deeply want to join the travel industry now, they might question that decision. But I mean, honestly, I think it's the right time, it's the right opportunities in the travel space. I think travel as an industry is a really resilient industry. It'll definitely kind of bounce back to the pre-pandemic and continue to grow from there in the hopefully near to medium term. So it'll come back, it'll be resilient. It's a good place to be. And I think it's more so, I think seeing some of the studies of like what people in the younger generations want from a job now, and it's a lot of that is like the mission-driven culture and the values for the company that they work for. And I think travel is a perfect opportunity for that, where you're working for, I mean, assuming most people enjoy traveling, enjoy trips, I think you're kind of working for a company that you can be familiar with their products, you can enjoy their products. But then I think you can see the value that travel brings to our global economy and to our global cultures, and being able to bring people together, to bring families together, which is exceedingly important in today's kind of virtual world. But then just being able to have people experience new cultures and kind of generate new experiences around the world, I think is really important. And I think being able to work for a company that provides that level of benefit in the travel industry will be kind of crucial, and would definitely recommend people get involved. And I think even, I guess, from a more practical perspective, just reaching out to people, if there's companies that you're interested in working for in travel or in other places, just kind of reaching out and seeing who's in your network and trying to piece together contacts to explore those opportunities. I think with the kind of travel rebounding in the near term, there'll be opportunities out there in the travel sector. So just encourage people to continue to take advantage of those and work with their networks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Justin, for your great insights and recommendations. I found this chat very insightful. So thank you.
Thanks, Coral. No, it was great to talk to you, and enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. And yeah, and to you, thanks for listening in. I hope you could get at least one thing out of this chat. Please don't forget to follow London Business School Travel and Hospitality LinkedIn page for more content all about the travel industry. Thank you so much.